My husband cheated on me with his subordinate for 6 months. He confessed in front of 45 guests at his surprise party. So I exposed him to HR, and he lost his $120K job. I'm 37 years old. Never imagined I'd be telling this story. But here we are. And believe me, I need to get it all out. Because what happened 7 months ago literally exploded my life in the most humiliating and public way possible. I've been married for 13 years. I was married to Thomas, and I thought we had a good life. You know? Not perfect, but solid. I left my job in marketing like 8 years ago to be a stay-at-home wife because he was making good money as a regional manager at a logistics company, and I wanted to focus on the house, on us, on building something together. We didn't have kids. It never worked out for us, but we were okay with that. Or at least I thought I was. The thing is that Thomas was turning 40 inches October, and I wanted to do something special. Like really special. Because he always said he didn't like big celebrations, but I knew deep down he'd love a surprise. I spent like 2 months planning this party, contacting his family, his work, friends, people he hadn't seen since college, coordinating everything with his mom, Nancy, because the party was going to be at her house, which is technically where we lived. Let me explain that because it's important later. The house belongs to Nancy. She lent it to us, or rather let us live there, when we got married and never charged us rent or anything. Just asked us to pay utilities and maintenance. Nancy is like 68 years old, and she's one of those super independent women who tells you things straight up. I always got along great with her. Way better than Thomas, honestly. So anyway, I organized this perfect party, hired catering, decorations, music, everything. I told Thomas we were having a quiet dinner with Nancy that Friday night, that he should come straight from work to the house around 7 at night. He said perfect, that he had some things to finish at the office, but he'd make it on time. I was running around all day, making sure everything was perfect. There were like 45 people, waiting inside, everyone hidden, ready to yell surprise when he walked in. I had the 3-tier cake he loved, chocolate with raspberries. I spent like $300 on that cake. Can you believe it? But I wanted everything to be perfect. It was 7:15 when we heard Thomas's car arrive. We all got in position, lights off, total silence, the excitement. I was standing right in front of the door with Nancy next to me. My heart was beating super fast because I was so excited to see his face when he saw everyone. We heard his footsteps on the porch, the key in the lock, and then the door opened. And there was Thomas. Kissing a woman. Not just any kiss, like an intense kiss, with his hands on her face, both of them laughing between kisses, completely oblivious to the fact that there were 45 people watching them in the darkness. Someone turned on the lights and everyone yelled surprise, but it wasn't the kind of surprise I had planned. It was a second of total confusion, where Thomas, separated from the woman and saw all of us standing there, and the expression on his face. God, I'll never forget that expression. It was pure terror mixed with shame, guilt, I don't know. But it definitely wasn't the happy face I expected to see. The woman was Kimberly, 28 years old. Worked under Thomas's orders at his office. I'd met her a couple times at company events. Always thought she was a bit intense, one of those who laughs too loud at the boss's jokes. You know what I mean? She was standing there with her hand still on my husband's chest, looking at everyone with wide eyes. The silence was deafening. Like that awkward silence where you can hear your own breathing and you feel like you're going to throw up. I couldn't move. I literally felt like my feet were nailed to the floor. Nancy was the first to speak. She said, Thomas, what the hell is going on here? And he, my husband of 13 years, the man I shared more than a decade of my life with, opened his mouth and said, and I swear this is verbatim, Mom, I'm so sorry. This wasn't how this was supposed to come out. But Kimberly and I have been dating for 6 months, and I think I'm falling in love with her. Can you imagine? In front of all his family, his friends, his coworkers, his cousins, his uncle who traveled from Miami, everyone. He confessed a 6-month affair like he was announcing he changed coffee brands. Some of his work friends started murmuring among themselves. Clearly, they already knew or suspected it, which made me feel even more like an idiot because apparently I was the only one who had no idea what was going on. Kimberly, with all the nerve in the world, said something like, I'm sorry, it's like this, but Thomas and I have a real connection. I'm practically his work wife. She said those words in my house, at the party that I organized, while I was standing there in the dress I bought specifically for this occasion. Something in my brain clicked at that moment. You know? Like, when you go from being in shock to being absolutely furious. I walked to the table where the $300 cake was, grabbed it with both hands, and before anyone could stop me, I threw it straight in Thomas's face. The cake exploded on his face, chocolate and raspberry everywhere, on his expensive shirt, in his hair, dripping down his face. It was satisfying for like 2 seconds before the real humiliation hit me, because everyone was there, watching, some taking out their phones to record, and I had just thrown a cake at my cheating husband in front of half the world. Nancy grabbed my arm and said, "Inside. Now." But I didn't want to go inside. I wanted answers. I wanted to scream at him. I don't know what I wanted. Thomas was wiping his face with his hands, and Kimberly was trying to help him, acting like she was the victim in all this. I walked up to her, grabbed her arm, and basically dragged her outside. I'm not a violent person. I never have been. But at that moment, all I could think about was getting her out of my sight. Outside in the yard, I asked her, "How long?" And she had the nerve to smile, like nervous but also kind of proud, and said 6 months like Thomas said. We got to know each other better at the company retreat in June. The company retreat, the same retreat where I couldn't go because Nancy had had minor surgery and someone needed to be with her. I stayed taking care of my mother-in-law while my husband was fooling around with his subordinate at a company-paid hotel. And the rage I felt was so intense that without thinking, I slapped her. Hard. Her head turned to the side and she just stood there, paralyzed for a second, before she started crying and saying she was going to call the police. I told her to do it, to call whoever she wanted, that she had just destroyed a 13-year marriage and had the guts to come to my house to kiss my husband. Thomas came running out, still with cake remnants on his face, and got between us. He told me to calm down, that this was unnecessary, that we could talk like adults, like adults, like adults. I yelled at him that what part of cheating on me for 6 months and confessing it to my face during his surprise party was adult behavior. He said he was sorry, that he didn't plan for it to come out like this, that he was going to tell me the truth that night after dinner. That's why he told Kimberly to come with him. They were going to tell me together. As if that made it better. Kimberly was crying, saying this was very difficult for her too, that she didn't want to hurt anyone but love is love. I wanted to strangle her. Thomas hugged her. He hugged her in front of me and said they were going to leave, that I needed time to process this, that we'd talk in a few days when everyone was calmer. Then, and this is what hurt me most of the whole night, he told me, "You're going to have to move out because I can't live like this. I need space to figure this out with Kimberly." He ordered me out of the house where we lived for 13 years. As if he had that power. They left together in his car, leaving me standing there in the yard with all the guests still inside, probably recording all this to upload to Facebook or TikTok or whatever. I went back into the house and Nancy was kicking everyone out, telling them the party was over, to go home. People were leaving with faces of pity or gossip. You know how it is. Some tried to tell me they were sorry, but most just wanted to get out of that uncomfortable situation as fast as possible. When everyone left, Nancy and I sat in the living room surrounded by happy birthday decorations and untouched food. I expected her to start consoling me or say something generic about how her son was an idiot. But instead she said, "This is my house, right?" And I said yes. "Technically, it's your house." She nodded and said, "Then I decide who stays and who goes. And you're staying." I didn't understand at first. Nancy explained that she had never transferred the property to Thomas like he always assumed she eventually would. The house was completely in her name. She paid the taxes. She was the legal owner. Thomas only lived there because she allowed it. And at that moment, she decided she no longer allowed it. She offered to sign me a symbolic rental agreement, like $500 a month just to make it official, and the house would be mine as long as I wanted it. She told me, "You're more my daughter than he is my son right now, and I'm not going to allow him to kick you out of your home for an affair with a girl who could be his daughter." I cried so much that night. Nancy stayed with me. We ordered pizza because all the party food was ruined or no one had touched it, and we started planning. She told me that Thomas didn't know the house was still in her name. He always assumed she had inherited it to him when he turned 30 or something. Nancy is a retired lawyer. I mean, she knows exactly how these things work, and she told me step by step what I needed to do. The next day, Saturday, Thomas called me like 10 times. I didn't answer any. Finally, he sent me a message saying he was going to be away all weekend with Kimberly, that when he returned Monday, he expected me to have started packing my things. He gave me 3 days to move out of my house. Nancy came early, we brought a lawyer friend of hers, and I signed an official rental contract. Then we spent the whole weekend packing Thomas's things. All his clothes, his stupid golf trophies, his books, his video game consoles, everything. We put it in boxes and trash bags. Sunday, I hired a locksmith to change all the locks. All of them. Front door, back door, garage door, everything. I also installed security cameras, like those that send notifications to your phone when they detect motion. I spent like $800 on the complete system, but it was worth every penny. I put all of Thomas's boxes and bags on the porch, covered with plastic in case it rained, and waited. Monday, at 6 inches, the evening Thomas arrived. Alone. He tried to open the door with his key, and obviously it didn't work. He rang the doorbell, knocked on the door, yelled my name. I was watching everything from my phone thanks to the cameras. I didn't open. He saw his stuff on the porch and started calling me, message after message saying this was ridiculous, that I couldn't kick him out like this, that this was his house. After like half an hour, he called Nancy. I heard that side of the conversation later when Nancy told me about it. Basically, Thomas yelling at his mom that, how dare she choose me over him, her own son, and Nancy telling him that he chose Kimberly over his wife, that now he should face the consequences of his actions. Thomas stayed at a hotel that night. The next day, I hired a divorce lawyer. The best one I could afford. Well, that Nancy helped me pay for because I didn't have much money of my own after 8 years without working. I asked for alimony, compensatory pension, because I gave up my career to be a housewife, and he makes like $120,000 a year. My lawyer said I had a solid case, especially because he publicly confessed the infidelity in front of witnesses. But here comes the part where I really got my revenge. I remembered that at the party there were several of Thomas's coworkers, people from his office. I remembered that Kimberly worked under his orders, that he was her direct boss. That's a massive conflict of interest, probably violates like 50 human resources policies. So I wrote a super detailed email to the human resources director at his company, explaining everything. The 6-month affair, how it started at the corporate retreat, how he's her direct supervisor, how she called him her work husband, everything. I included dates, places, names of witnesses who were at the party. I sent that email on a Wednesday at 9 inches the morning. By Friday, Thomas was being investigated by human resources. No, because he called me furious, yelling that how dare I get his work involved in this, that I was ruining his life. I told him he ruined mine first, that I was just leveling the playing field. I hung up. I blocked his number. All communication after that was through lawyers. The investigation took like 3 weeks. They talked to Kimberly, to Thomas, to other employees. Apparently, they weren't as discreet as they thought. Several coworkers had seen them together in compromising situations. The result was that Thomas was fired. Fired. From his $1,000 a year job. The company has a zero-tolerance policy for relationships between supervisors and subordinates, especially when they're not reported. Kimberly received a formal warning but wasn't fired because technically she was the party with less power in the relationship. When I found out, I didn't feel guilty. Not one bit. I felt relief, I guess. Like there was finally some justice in all this. Thomas tried to sue me, for defamation or something, but his lawyer told him he had no case, because everything I wrote in that email was verifiable truth. The divorce was finalized like 5 months later. I got alimony of $3,000 a month for 6 years, which was the maximum my lawyer could negotiate considering we didn't have children. It's not much, but it's something. Especially because Thomas had to accept a new job that pays like half what he was making before. I also kept the car. A 2020 Honda Accord that was in both our names. And obviously I stayed in the house with my rental contract with Nancy. I took a solo vacation when everything was finalized. I went to Cancun for a week, something I always wanted to do, but Thomas said Mexico was too dangerous. It was incredible. I met people, drank too many margaritas, got tan, cried a little on the beach, but also laughed a lot. I felt like I was recovering parts of myself that I had forgotten existed. When I got back, I started looking for work. I I've got something part-time at a marketing agency. It's nothing glamorous, but I like being back in the field, using my brain again. My boss is great. She's a 4 or 5-year-old woman who's also divorced and completely understands my situation. I'm slowly rebuilding my career. As for Thomas and Kimberly, according to what I heard through Nancy, who found out from a cousin of Thomas, they're still together. They live in a small apartment because Thomas can't afford much more with his new salary. Kimberly still works at the same company, but basically nobody talks to her. They left her completely socially isolated after the scandal. Apparently, she regrets everything, but it's too late for regrets. Like a month ago, I started dating someone. Nothing serious yet, just casual coffees and dinners, but it's nice to feel valued again. His name is Daniel. He's 42 years old. He's a history teacher, and he doesn't have an ex-wife who appears out of nowhere or subordinates he's having affairs with. The bar is on. In the floor? I know. But after everything that happened, just being with someone decent feels like a gift. Nancy and I have dinner together every Sunday. It's our tradition now. Sometimes we talk about Thomas, about how she fails to see the signs that he was capable of something like this. But I tell her nobody could have known. People surprise you, for better or worse. She tells me I'm the daughter she always wanted, that she sees me stronger now than before, and I think she's right. I didn't plan to become this person, this version of me who throws cakes and ruins careers and fights for what she deserves, but here I am. Last week I saw Thomas at the supermarket. It was the first time since all this that I saw him in person. He looked tired, older. He saw me, opened his mouth like he was going to say something, and I just kept walking. I have nothing to say to him. That part of my life closed the night of his 40th birthday, when he decided to confess to a room full of people that he'd been cheating on me for months. Everything that came after were just consequences of his decisions, not mine.